Maxwell Hart was not a man who sought fame or fortune. A mechanic with a talent for fixing what others deemed impossible, he had spent his life hopping from one backwater space station to another, repairing ships that seemed beyond salvation. His modest vessel, the Iron Ark, was his home. A patchwork ship as rugged and reliable as its owner. The day the distress call came, Max was docked at a decrepit orbital station orbiting a dying star. His morning had started as it often did, a mug of bitter synth coffee and the gentle hum of the station's failing life support system. Then his comm system crackled to life, broadcasting an automated signal. "This is Queen Elira of the Taurelian Empire. The royal vessel, Starborn Majesty, is critically disabled. Assistance is requested. Compensation will be beyond measure." Max frowned, his fingers pausing over the datapad he'd been tinkering with. The Taurelians were notoriously proud, their technology so advanced that most mechanics wouldn't even attempt to touch it. And yet, here they were, calling out for help. Compensation beyond measure? Max muttered to himself, sipping his coffee. Bet that's what they said to the last dozen who tried. He accessed the galactic comm logs out of curiosity. As expected, every major repair guild and independent mechanic had either declined or failed to answer. The Taurelian Queen was stranded, her plea ignored by the galaxy. Max leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The Taurelians were known for their wealth, but more than that, they were known for their unshakable pride. If they'd issued this call, it meant they were desperate. "Well, Max," he said, standing up and grabbing his toolkit, "looks like you're about to get a job no one else wants." The Iron Ark dropped out of hyperspace into a stunning nebula of swirling greens and purples. At its center floated the Starborn Majesty, a ship so vast and intricately designed that it looked like it had been sculpted rather than built. Its crystalline hull shimmered faintly, but the lights of its propulsion systems were dark. Max maneuvered his vessel into the ship's docking bay, noting the eerie silence that greeted him. As he disembarked, a small delegation awaited him, 3 Taurelian guards in gleaming armor and a royal attendant who looked as though he couldn't decide whether to scowl or bow. "You're the mechanic who answered the call?" the attendant asked, his tone clipped. Max adjusted the strap of his toolkit, unfazed. "Maxwell Hart, at your service." "Where's the problem?" The attendant gestured for him to follow, leading him through the pristine, yet strangely lifeless halls of the Starborn Majesty. The Taurelians' advanced technology surrounded him, walls that glowed faintly with power, corridors that seemed to respond to their footsteps, but it was all eerily quiet. The hum of a functioning starship was absent, replaced by a suffocating stillness. They finally arrived at the ship's core, where a massive, crystalline engine pulsed erratically. Sparks flew from a shattered conduit, and a faint, acrid smell filled the air. "It's the quantum stabilizer," the attendant explained, his voice betraying his frustration. "None of our engineers can pinpoint the fault. The entire system is interconnected. Touching one part risks destabilizing the rest." Max stepped forward, his eyes scanning the engine. "Yeah, I see the problem," he muttered, already pulling tools from his belt. "Looks like a cascade failure in your resonance alignment. It's throwing the whole system out of phase." The attendant blinked. "You understand Taurelian technology?" Max grinned, kneeling to inspect a damaged panel. "Enough to know you've got a mess on your hands. Good thing I don't scare easy." A melodic voice cut through the room, commanding yet soft. "And good thing for us, Mr. Hart." Max looked up to see Queen Elira herself entering the chamber. Her presence was magnetic, tall, with luminous golden eyes and skin that glimmered faintly under the crystalline light. She carried herself with a grace that spoke of power and authority, but her expression was one of cautious hope. "Your Majesty," Max said, standing and inclining his head. "Didn't expect royalty to greet the help." Elira's lips twitched into a small smile. "In times of desperation, one cannot afford pride. Are you confident you can repair my ship?" Max met her gaze, his confidence unwavering. "I won't promise miracles, but I'll do what needs to be done." The Queen studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, Mr. Hart. The Starborn Majesty is in your hands. Do not fail us." As Max returned to his work, he couldn't help but feel the weight of her words. This wasn't just another repair job, this was a chance to prove himself on a galactic stage. And for better or worse, he intended to see it through. The The Starborn Majesty's engine core was unlike anything Maxwell Hart had encountered in his decades of tinkering and fixing ships. Its crystalline framework pulsed with erratic, chaotic light, casting an otherworldly glow across the cavernous chamber. The structure itself seemed alive, humming faintly as though protesting its malfunction. Max knelt at the base of the quantum stabilizer, carefully removing a panel that revealed an intricate web of conduits and glowing cables. His toolkit was open beside him, tools meticulously laid out, though none seemed particularly suited to this advanced alien technology. "Looks like someone decided to make engineering an art form," Max muttered to himself, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "You speak as though it's a flaw," came a melodic voice from behind him. Max turned to see Queen Elira standing at the threshold, flanked by two of her royal guards. She had exchanged her formal regalia for a more practical, though no less elegant, jumpsuit that shimmered with faint patterns of gold and violet. Her luminous golden eyes fixed on him with curiosity. "Not a flaw, just complicated," Max replied, turning back to the engine. "Fixing this thing isn't going to be like patching up a freighter's thrusters." Elira stepped closer, her guards reluctantly following at a respectful distance. "Every engineer who has attempted to repair this core has failed. What makes you believe you will succeed?" Max tightened a bolt on one of the stabilizer's alignment plates, then glanced up at her. "I don't think about failure, just problems that haven't been solved yet." For a moment, Elira said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then she gestured to the glowing engine. "What do you see?" Max wiped his hands on a rag, his gaze shifting to the stabilizer's chaotic pulses. "Your quantum stabilizer's resonance is out of sync with the energy flow from the core. If I had to guess, something's interfering with the harmonic alignment. Could be external damage or maybe an internal miscalibration." Elira arched an elegant eyebrow. "And your solution?" "First, I'll isolate the stabilizer from the main core. That'll buy us some time to figure out what's throwing it off." Max picked up a diagnostic tool and started scanning the conduits. "Then, I'll run a resonance check on the stabilizer itself. If we're lucky, it's just a busted modulator. And if we're not?" Elira asked, folding her arms. Max smirked, already engrossed in his work. "Then I hope your people like improvisation." The task of isolating the stabilizer was more difficult than Max had anticipated. The system's design was deeply integrated, each component linked to another in a fragile balance. A single mistake could cause the entire engine to destabilize further, potentially leading to catastrophic failure. "Mr. Hart, the stabilizer is tied directly to the ship's life support systems," said Valren, the ship's chief engineer, who had reluctantly joined Max at Elira's request. His tone was skeptical, his sharp features betraying his disdain for having an outsider meddle with the ship. "If you sever the wrong connection—" "I know," Max interrupted, not looking up. "That's why I'm not severing anything. I'm rerouting the flow, not cutting it off." Valren exchanged a doubtful glance with Elira, who merely nodded for him to continue assisting. Max worked quickly but carefully, his hands moving with practiced precision as he adjusted conduits and bypassed damaged nodes. Elira watched him closely. "You approach this task with an unshakable confidence. Is that natural for humans?" "Not all humans," Max replied, pausing to test the stabilizer's energy flow. "Just the ones crazy enough to work on a ship like this." The Queen allowed herself a small smile. "Perhaps that is why you were the only one to answer our call." As Max reconnected the final bypass, the core's chaotic pulses began to stabilize, their rhythm evening out into a faint, steady glow. A collective sigh of relief swept through the chamber. "It's not fixed yet," Max warned, standing and wiping his hands. "This is just a temporary patch, but it'll hold long enough for me to figure out what's really going on." Elira inclined her head. "You've done more in hours than my engineers have in weeks. You have my gratitude, Mr. Hart." "Don't thank me yet, Your Majesty," Max said, already turning back to his tools. "There's still a long way to go." As Max delved deeper into the stabilizer systems, he began to notice patterns in the damage. Patterns that didn't make sense. Certain components were misaligned in ways that seemed deliberate, and some conduits had been damaged in ways that suggested tampering rather than wear and tear. "Something doesn't add up," Max muttered, scanning the internal systems with a handheld device. Illyra, who had remained in the chamber despite Valren's protests, stepped closer. "What do you mean?" Max gestured to the stabilizer's alignment matrix. "This isn't just a mechanical failure. Someone's been messing with your ship, Your Majesty. These misalignments aren't natural. They're sabotage." Illyra's expression darkened. "Sabotage? Who would dare?" "That's the million-credit question," Max said, crossing his arms. "Any recent enemies? Rival factions? Jealous suitors?" Illyra's jaw tightened. "The Torellian Empire has many enemies, but none who would dare strike directly at the royal vessel." "Then maybe you've got a traitor on board," Max suggested, his tone matter-of-fact. Valren bristled at the implication. "You insult the honor of this crew." "I'm just following the evidence," Max shot back. "And the evidence says someone's been messing with your systems. You don't have to like it, but you can't ignore it." Illyra raised a hand, silencing Valren. "Enough. If Mr. Hart's assessment is correct, then we must address this threat immediately." Max nodded. "Good, but first, let me finish stabilizing your engine. If this ship goes dark, it won't matter who's behind it." The discovery of sabotage added a new layer of urgency to Max's work. As he recalibrated the stabilizer, Illyra ordered her guards to investigate the crew, searching for any signs of treachery. The tension aboard the Starborn Majesty was palpable, every crew member aware that a traitor could be among them. Max worked tirelessly, his focus unshaken despite the chaos around him. Hours later, he reconnected the stabilizer to the main core and initiated a test sequence. The engine roared to life, its rhythmic pulses steady and strong. "It's done," Max announced, stepping back as the core's light bathed the chamber in a warm glow. "Your ship's back online." Illyra approached him, her expression one of genuine gratitude. "You've saved my vessel, Mr. Hart, and perhaps my people as well." Max smiled faintly, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "All in a day's work, Your Majesty." But even as the crew celebrated the engine's recovery, Max couldn't shake the nagging thought that their troubles were far from over. The sabotage wasn't just an attack on the ship, it was a threat to Illyra's very throne. And something told Max he wasn't done with the Starborn Majesty just yet. The Starborn Majesty was alive again, its core stabilized and humming with power, but the air aboard the ship remained heavy with unease. Queen Illyra's command to investigate the sabotage had sent a ripple of fear through the crew. The Torellians were a proud and loyal people. The idea that one among them had betrayed their queen was unthinkable. Max Hart, now both the ship's savior and the unexpected center of attention, had no time to rest. Illyra summoned him to the Royal Council chamber, a grand space where crystalline walls glowed softly, displaying constellations that seemed to shift with the viewer's perspective. Seated at the head of the council table, Illyra exuded calm authority. Her golden eyes, however, betrayed the storm brewing within. Flanking her were her most trusted advisors and Valren, the chief engineer, who still wore his thinly veiled skepticism like armor. "Mr. Hart," Illyra began, her voice measured, "your discovery of sabotage cannot be ignored. My advisors and I have combed through the crew's records. No glaring disloyalty has been found, but we are certain the traitor remains aboard. You must help us uncover them." Max, leaning casually against the table's edge, frowned. "I'm a mechanic, not a detective. But if the sabotage was intentional, there's a trail somewhere. Have you checked who had access to the engine core?" "We have," Illyra confirmed. "Only my most trusted engineers and security personnel, but none have raised suspicion." "Sometimes the obvious isn't the answer," Max mused, rubbing his chin. "What if the sabotage didn't come from the engine room? Whoever did this might have used another system to trigger the damage." Valren bristled. "A bold theory from someone who barely understands our technology." "Bold," Max shot back, "but not impossible. Let me look at your network logs. If the saboteur accessed the core indirectly, there'll be evidence." Illyra nodded, silencing Valren's protests with a glance. "Do what you must, Mr. Hart, but be swift. The longer we delay, the greater the risk." Max returned to the engineering bay, where a large crystalline console awaited him. With the help of a Torellian technician who begrudgingly handed over the network logs, Max began his deep dive into the ship's systems. The complexity of the Starborn Majesty was astounding. Its technology operated on principles that melded quantum physics and harmonic resonance, a blend that Max found both fascinating and maddening. Whoever did this knew their way around. Max muttered as he sifted through lines of encrypted data, smart enough to avoid leaving obvious tracks. After hours of searching, Max found a subtle anomaly, a series of unauthorized commands routed through the ship's environmental controls. The commands had altered the harmonic resonance of the engine core, slowly destabilizing it over time. It was a clever trick, one that required precision and deep knowledge of the ship's systems. "This is it," Max said, pointing to the screen. "Your saboteur used the environmental systems to trigger the failure. Whoever issued these commands is your culprit." Illyra, who had joined him in the engineering bay, leaned over his shoulder to study the data. "Can you trace the commands to their source?" "Already on it," Max replied, his fingers flying over the console. Within moments, a name appeared on the screen: Lieutenant Arliss, a mid-ranking officer in the ship's security detail. Illyra's expression hardened. "Arliss has been with my fleet for years. He swore loyalty to my house." "Looks like he swore loyalty to someone else," Max said grimly. The commands came from his station. Arliss was brought to the royal chamber under heavy guard. His sharp features and calculating eyes betrayed little emotion as he was made to stand before Illyra and her council. "Lieutenant Arliss," Illyra began, her tone icy, "you are accused of sabotaging this vessel, an act of treason against the Turellian crown. How do you plead?" Arliss smirked, his calm demeanor unnerving. "Plead? I have nothing to confess, Your Majesty. The human's accusations are baseless." Max stepped forward, holding a datapad. "These logs say otherwise. Every command you issued to the environmental systems is recorded right here. Care to explain why you were tinkering with systems that had nothing to do with your job?" Arliss's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Fabrications. You expect the Queen to trust the word of a human over her own officers?" Illyra's golden eyes narrowed. "Enough. Arliss, you have betrayed my trust, and I will not tolerate your lies. Guards, seize him." As the guards moved to restrain him, Arliss acted. In one swift motion, he activated a hidden blade, slicing through the restraints of one guard and lunging toward Illyra. Chaos erupted in the chamber as the advisors scattered and the guards drew their weapons. Max reacted on instinct. Grabbing a nearby metal rod, he threw himself into Arliss's path, blocking the blade with a resounding clang. The force of the impact sent him staggering, but he held his ground, using his compact size to maneuver around the larger Turellian. "You're not touching her," Max growled, dodging another swipe of the blade. With a burst of effort, Max disarmed Arliss, using the rod to knock the blade from his hand. The guards quickly subdued the traitor, dragging him to the ground as Max stood panting, his makeshift weapon still clenched tightly. Illyra approached, her expression a mixture of relief and gratitude. "You saved my life, Mr. Hart." Max shrugged, his adrenaline still pumping. "Just another day on the job." With Arliss in custody, the truth came to light. Under interrogation, he confessed to working for a rival faction seeking to destabilize the Turellian monarchy. His sabotage was meant to cripple the Starborn Majesty and leave Illyra vulnerable during a critical diplomatic mission. Illyra wasted no time in addressing the aftermath. The traitors' network was dismantled and security aboard the ship was tightened. The Queen personally oversaw the final restoration of the ship, ensuring that every system was returned to full functionality. Max, meanwhile, found himself hailed as a hero by the crew. Despite their initial skepticism, the Turellians now regarded him with respect, even awe. Valren, though still somewhat prickly, begrudgingly acknowledged Max's role in saving the ship and the Queen. In the Grand Hall, a formal ceremony was held to honor Max's contributions. The chamber was filled with dignitaries and crew members, all gathered to witness the Queen's gratitude. "Mr. Maxwell Hart," Illyra said, standing before him in her regal attire, "you have done more than repair my ship. You have uncovered treachery, saved countless lives, and proven that courage and ingenuity know no bounds. For your actions, I bestow upon you the title of Honorary Turellian and grant you a place in my court, should you choose to accept it." Max, clad in the finest attire the Turellians could provide, looked momentarily stunned. Then he grinned, his characteristic charm shining through. "Well, Your Majesty, I guess I'll have to stick around. Don't want you breaking your fancy ship again." The hall erupted in laughter and applause, and Illyra smiled, her eyes reflecting warmth. "Welcome to the Starborn Majesty, Mr. Hart. Our future is brighter with you among us." As the ceremony continued, Max couldn't help but marvel at how his life had changed. From a wandering mechanic to a royal hero, he had found a place where his skills and determination truly mattered, and perhaps something even more. Life aboard the Starborn Majesty settled into a tentative peace after the dramatic unmasking of Lieutenant Arliss. Maxwell Hart, now an honorary Tyrellian, found himself in an unexpected but not unwelcome role as the ship's chief technical advisor. The position came with its own challenges, most notably earning the trust of a crew still adjusting to a human's presence at the heart of their advanced vessel. Max, for his part, thrived in the chaos. The Tyrellian technology fascinated him, pushing the boundaries of everything he knew about engineering. He spent days in the engine bay, working alongside Val Wren and his team, and nights in the Royal Archives, poring over schematics and blueprints. It wasn't long, however, before a new crisis threatened to unravel the fragile sense of stability aboard the Majesty. The trouble began during a routine hyperspace jump. The Starborn Majesty's Rift engine, an intricate, crystalline marvel capable of folding space-time, began to malfunction mid-jump. Warning sirens blared through the ship, and the once harmonious hum of the engine turned into a chaotic screech. Max, working in the engineering bay, immediately recognized the severity of the issue. "Cut the power to the drive," he shouted over the din, rushing to the main console. Val Wren, pale but composed, responded. "We can't. The containment field is destabilizing. If we shut it down now, it'll tear the ship apart," Max finished grimly, already calculating solutions in his mind. "We need to reinforce the field, divert auxiliary power, and recalibrate the stabilizers." As the crew scrambled to execute his orders, Max noticed something unusual. The Rift engine's crystal matrix was resonating at an unnatural frequency, similar to the sabotage pattern he had discovered earlier. His gut told him this wasn't a coincidence. Queen Alira's voice came through the comm system, calm but firm. "Mr. Hart, report. We've got a serious problem, Your Majesty," Max replied, his hands flying over the controls. "If I don't fix this fast, we're looking at a catastrophic implosion." "Do whatever it takes," Alira ordered. "The lives of my crew are in your hands." Max glanced at Val Wren. "Keep the containment field stable. I'm going into the Matrix." Val Wren's eyes widened. "That's insane. The radiation alone." "Won't matter if we're all vaporized," Max shot back. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed his toolkit and made his way to the Rift engine's core chamber. The core chamber was a mesmerizing but terrifying sight. The massive crystalline structure, usually a source of serene, pulsing light, now radiated violent, erratic flashes that cast jagged shadows across the room. The temperature was unbearable, and the air crackled with unstable energy. Max donned a protective suit and stepped onto the narrow platform that led to the core's control panel. Each step felt like a battle as the chamber's chaotic energy pushed against him. Reaching the panel, Max connected his handheld diagnostic device and began scanning the matrix. The readings confirmed his worst fears. The same subtle tampering that had destabilized the quantum stabilizer was now infecting the Rift engine. "Someone really doesn't like you, Alira," Max muttered under his breath as he worked to recalibrate the matrix's harmonics. Sweat dripped down his face despite the suit's cooling system, but his hands never faltered. Behind him, the comm crackled to life. It was Alira's voice, soft but steady. "Maxwell, what is your status?" "Working on it," he replied, his voice strained. "This matrix is fighting me every step of the way, but I've almost got it. Just keep everyone calm up there." "You have my trust," Alira said. Her words, simple yet sincere, gave Max the push he needed to press on. Just as Max completed the recalibration, a surge of energy blasted through the chamber, sending him sprawling. The platform shook violently, and the crystalline core began to fracture, emitting an ear-splitting wail. "Containment breach imminent," Val Wren's voice shouted over the comm. Max scrambled to his feet, his diagnostic device still clutched in one hand. He spotted the source of the surge, a small, concealed device embedded in the matrix. It pulsed with the same disruptive energy patterns he'd seen before. "Sabotage," Max growled. Again. Before he could disable the device, the chamber's emergency lockdown activated, sealing him inside. Through the observation window, he saw a shadowy figure retreating, their features obscured by a cloak. "Alira!" Max yelled into the comm. "The saboteur is on the move. Get your security team down here now. We're on it, Illyra replied, her tone sharp with urgency. And you? I'll keep this ship from blowing up, thanks for asking, Max snapped, turning back to the core. The device embedded in the matrix was designed to overload the harmonics, pushing the engine to a breaking point. Max had only minutes to neutralize it. Ignoring the searing heat and the increasingly unstable environment, he pried the device loose and connected it to his diagnostic tool. Come on, he muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. Show me your secrets. The device resisted his attempts to disarm it, its mechanisms far more sophisticated than anything he'd dealt with before. Max's mind raced, searching for a workaround. Then it hit him. If he couldn't disarm it, he could redirect its energy into a controlled release. Valren, Max barked over the comm. I'm setting up an energy dump. Divert power to the auxiliary grid and prepare to vent the excess through the secondary conduits. That's insane, Valren replied. The conduits can't handle that load. They'll have to. Max shot back, do it or we all go up in flames. The plan was risky, but Max executed it with precision. As the device's energy surged toward critical levels, he rerouted the overload into the auxiliary grid. The conduits groaned under the strain, but they held. The core stabilized, its chaotic flashes dimming into a steady glow. Max collapsed on the platform, gasping for breath. It's done, he said hoarsely. The comm crackled with Illyra's voice. Maxwell, you've done it again. Are you unharmed? Mostly, Max replied, forcing himself to his feet. But we've got a bigger problem. The saboteur's still on board. By the time Max returned to the command deck, Illyra's security team had apprehended the cloaked figure. The saboteur, revealed to be another Turellian officer, was dragged before the Queen. Their defiant glare suggested this wasn't the end of their mission. You have failed, Illyra said coldly. But you will answer for your crimes. As the saboteur was taken away, Illyra turned to Max. Her gaze, filled with gratitude and admiration, lingered on him. Once again, you've saved my people. Your courage and brilliance know no bounds. Max smirked, though his exhaustion was evident. All in a day's work, Your Majesty. As the crew celebrated the ship's survival, Max couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a far greater challenge. The saboteur's mission had been part of something larger, and he was now firmly entangled in the fate of the Starborn Majesty and its enigmatic queen. The saboteur's capture brought little comfort to the crew of the Starborn Majesty. Interrogations revealed that the traitor was merely a pawn in a larger conspiracy, their orders relayed through encrypted channels that defied even the Turellians' advanced decryption systems. This revelation left Queen Illyra and her council on edge, the ship's survival now overshadowed by the looming threat of an unseen enemy. Max's heart, meanwhile, found himself thrust even deeper into the political and operational heart of the ship. At Illyra's request, he began working alongside Valren and the intelligence division to analyze the sabotage device and the encrypted data they had recovered. The device's intricate design hinted at a level of technological sophistication that rivaled even the Turellians. This isn't just sabotage, Max said during a meeting with Illyra and her advisors. This is warfare. Someone out there wants your ship and maybe your throne gone. Illyra nodded, her expression grim. But who? The Turellian Empire has many rivals, but few with the resources to infiltrate my fleet. Valren, still wary of Max but begrudgingly respectful of his expertise, spoke up. The harmonics used in the sabotage device are not Turellian in origin. They bear similarities to the Ninarith Consortium's technology. The room fell silent at the mention of the Ninarith Consortium, a shadowy alliance of rogue scientists, mercenaries, and warlords notorious for destabilizing galactic powers through covert operations. If it's the Ninarith, Illyra said, her voice icy, then they've made their intentions clear. This ship and my leadership are threats to their expansion. We need to make a move before they do, Max interjected. If we sit here waiting, we're giving them more time to strike. Illyra turned to him, her golden eyes blazing. What do you propose, Maxwell? Max leaned forward, his voice steady. We take the fight to them. I've got a hunch about where they might be operating, based on the energy signatures from the sabotage device. Let me rig a countermeasure, something that'll send them a message they won't forget. Illyra's lips curved into a faint smile. You're bold, Maxwell Hart. I'll allow it, but be warned. Failure is not an option. Max and Valren worked tirelessly to retrofit the Starborn Majesty with a countermeasure based on the sabotage device's harmonic patterns. The plan was to use the ship's advanced resonance systems to emit a targeted disruption pulse, capable of crippling the 9-Earth's technology without causing permanent damage to nearby systems. The target was a suspected 9-Earth base hidden within a dense asteroid field, its location inferred from the device's energy signatures. Navigating the field was no small feat, but the Majesty's advanced sensors and maneuvering capabilities made the approach possible. As the ship drew closer to the base, the tension aboard was palpable. Illyra joined Max on the bridge, her presence a steadying force. "Are you certain this will work?" she asked quietly. Max glanced at her, his green eyes filled with determination. "Not 100%, but it's our best shot." Illyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Then let us proceed." As the Majesty neared the base, its sensors detected a fleet of 9-Earth ships lying in wait. The enemy had anticipated their arrival. The Torellian crew sprang into action, and the ship shuddered as the first volley of enemy fire struck the shields. "Battle stations," Illyra commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Max rushed to the engineering bay, coordinating with Valren to ensure the countermeasure remained operational. "How long until we can deploy the pulse?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. 5 minutes, if the system holds," Valren replied, his hands flying over the controls. "We don't have 5 minutes," Max muttered, his mind racing. Grabbing a toolkit, he made his way to the core chamber, determined to manually expedite the process. The core chamber was a cacophony of alarms and flashing lights as Max worked to synchronize the resonance systems. The ship trembled under the relentless assault, but Max blocked out the chaos, his focus unshakable. "Ready to fire the pulse," he called over the comm. "Do it," Illyra ordered. With a deep breath, Max activated the countermeasure. The ship's core emitted a blinding wave of energy, the pulse rippling through the asteroid field. The 9-Earth ships faltered, their systems shorting out as the disruption pulse took effect. Cheers erupted across the Majesty as the enemy fleet retreated, their base left vulnerable and defenseless. The battle was over, but the aftermath revealed the extent of the 9-Earth threat. Illyra's forces recovered critical data from the enemy base, uncovering plans that hinted at a galaxy-wide destabilization campaign. The information would prove invaluable in countering future attacks. On the bridge, Illyra stood beside Max as they reviewed the recovered data. "You've not only saved my ship twice, but also uncovered a threat to the entire galaxy," she said, her tone filled with both gratitude and admiration. Max shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "Guess I have a knack for being in the right place at the right time." Illyra turned to him, her golden eyes softening. "It's more than that, Maxwell. Your courage, ingenuity, and loyalty have proven invaluable. You are no longer just an ally, you are one of us." The Queen's words struck a chord deep within Max. For years, he had drifted from one job to another, never finding a place where he truly belonged. But here, aboard the Starborn Majesty, he had found purpose, respect, and something more. A bond with Illyra that went beyond duty. As the Majesty set course for its next mission, Max stood at the observation deck, gazing at the stars. Illyra joined him, her presence as radiant as the constellations beyond the glass. "What's next for us?" Max asked, his tone light but curious. Illyra smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "The galaxy is vast, Maxwell, and its challenges are endless. But with you by my side, I feel we can face anything." Max chuckled. "Careful, Your Majesty. I might start thinking I'm indispensable." "You already are," she replied softly, her words carrying a weight that left Max momentarily speechless. Together they watched as the Starborn Majesty sailed into the unknown, a beacon of resilience and unity in a galaxy fraught with danger. For Max and Illyra, the journey was just beginning, their bond a testament to the strength found in the most unlikely alliances.